your entrepreneurship journey didn't start as pastoring.
Right.
You were in a rock band. Yeah. So this really became a thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And was
awesome.
This like the 70s, 80s, 90s?
This is back when dinosaurs roamed the land. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what if we build a coffee shop and then have our office there?
Yeah.
Could be out in public space. And I have to confess, I don't drink coffee. And I do very little specifically about coffee shop. Great salary, great, big church. I didn't have to think for 2 minutes about that because I knew I was called to the next generation and helping start something new. And that just helped filter a lot of things that I would have otherwise probably done. As a pastor, my tendency is to try to reach everybody. But over the last few years, I've learned how to pour deeply into a few and disciple a few and invest in those few. And then it's amazing what they can do. There's no limit to what God can do.
This is the Unleash Your Purpose podcast.
All right. So welcome to Unleash Your Purpose with your host, Ryan Centers. And I am super honored. This feels very humbling to be with not just a friend, but a mentor for more than almost 2 decades.
Wow.
Doesn't that feel...
That's amazing.
Yes, it makes me feel very old.
Yeah, both of us.
What is so fun about this is you were my... you officiated Sarah and I's wedding.
Yes.
And then a year ago, I had the privilege... I was the youth pastor at the church that you were the senior pastor, lead pastor at, and your son was in my youth group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he asked me to officiate his wedding, so I got to officiate your son's wedding.
Yes, I wasn't all offended that he didn't ask me to officiate.
Yes.
I was thrilled that you were.
I was 39 years old, and my daughter got married at your church, and she didn't ask me either. I don't know, and I was offended. Yeah. So there's 2 types of people. Some are more easily offended than others, and I definitely am the more offended type.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, you've been a huge inspiration to me over the years. I've watched you grow and just get excited and thrilled to see what God's doing through you. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. My wife and I, what you may not even remember is the impact that you had. Starting off when I was in junior high, I was involved in a church and we were doing a building campaign, and I went with this pastor I barely knew, which ended up being you, to different people's houses fundraising about this youth building.
Yes.
And then fast forward, we finished up college and I was trying to figure out what in the world to do with my life, and I was honestly just very self-centered and focusing on what success looked like for me and for Sarah. And we were at a camp. Sarah's parents forced me to go to this family camp that I was not all about. And you were there, and God grabbed a hold of me, and I surrendered myself. And you prayed over me that day that God had a big plan. And now we are 20 years later.
We are. Amazing what God has done.
And our lives, our nanny was here earlier, and we were talking about your biography about being a pastor, and you have a PhD in entrepreneurship, and just have you've had just this wealth of knowledge of just business and nonprofit work and boards. And she says, "Wait, are you talking about Ryan?" And we're like, "No, we're talking about Pastor Paul." So it's been very kind of cool to watch. As more I learn about your life, is like maybe I'm just following behind your footsteps. So
thank you.
So your entrepreneurship journey didn't start as pastoring. You were in a rock band.
Well, even before that, my first when I was a kid, I was a dreamer.
Okay.
I wanted to build a Olympic-sized swimming pool in our backyard. Mom and Dad said, "Go for it."
Nice.
So I started digging. I had to dig off the snow, and then realized in Iowa, in the middle of winter, there's 18 inches of ice, and so I gave up on that dream. But yeah, in high school, I felt called by God to serve Him. I was excited about that, wanted to give my life to that. But I thought pastors were kind of boring and irrelevant at the time.
Okay.
And here I am one. But so we started a Christian rock band in high school and played wherever anybody would let us until finally we were in college. We'd been traveling in the summers, and we thought, man, we're old. We're 20 years old. Time for us to get serious. So we dropped out of college. I'm not recommending that, but we dropped out of college, bought a bus, recorded our first album, and hit the road. We were on the road for 25 concerts a month for several years. And
No way.
Incredible experience.
Do you have long hair?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I can show you pictures. Yeah.
Were you, what did you play?
I played guitar, but then a guitar player came along who was much better than me. And so I played trombone and directed the band. And so it was a great experience for me learning how to organize concerts and promotion, marketing. I was in charge of all that and booking events.
So you were kind of like the band manager before there was band managers?
Until we hired a band manager.
Okay.
After a while, it got to be too much.
So this really became a thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And was this
awesome.
like the 70s, 80s, 90s?
This is back when dinosaurs roamed the land. Okay. Late 70s, early 80s.
Okay. So before I was born. Yeah.
Before we do high school assemblies and concerts in parks and then churches as well, colleges all over the United States. And fantastic. 9 guys. That was the best part. We became a team. Really worked together and loved each other. And then we moved to the Twin Cities to take a sabbatical and write our 3rd album. And in that year, 8 of the 9 guys got married or engaged. So,
including you?
Yep. Well, I got engaged. So the band never really officially ended. We just dissipated, I guess. Okay. And that led me to other youth work and other ministry opportunities. And
so you were like was it you're naturally kind of entrepreneurial and ministry minded, and were you trying to figure out like, how do I just do ministry my own way, or what was?
I didn't realize it till later, but there was always something in me that wanted to help start something new and fresh to make a difference for the kingdom.
Okay.
It wasn't just because I love music, as we wanted to help reach youth all over the country. So that passion burned in me, and it still does. Yeah,
you don't like you. I can resonate with that a lot. Like for me, even as a young, I was a manager of a band as well. Probably we didn't make an album or anything, but we did tour India.
Wow.
Ooh, yes. And Prescott, Arizona.
There we go.
We were a thriving band. And for me, I've always been, I guess, entrepreneurial, but I didn't realize it. I just love creating, love this idea of bringing people together.
Yes.
And I got excited for those opportunities in that mission. And now you ended up coming out from there to Phoenix.
Right. We had an opportunity in my seminary training. Had to do an internship for a year. They said, would you rather go to Northwest North Dakota or Glendale, Arizona?
Okay.
Tough decision. Landed in Glendale. It was a great church at the time, thriving, and I got to do a lot of different things. Working for a very entrepreneurial pastor, I was able to dream and help develop the school and quite a few different things as nonprofits.
Okay. Because, this church was, and this was where I was a youth pastor at, actually, it had a school, it had
some memorial gardens, there's a leadership center, there was quite a few different things.
Yeah, you wrote a book during all of this time.
And that's when I got my PhD, because we were developing a 200-acre campus, and I was in charge of
200 acres?
At the time.
My goodness.
And I was way over my head. So I thought I better get my theory up with my practice. So that's when I started studying entrepreneurship.
Because you're just you're kind of the opposite of what a lot of entrepreneurs are nowadays, is they get an MBA, but they don't really have any practical experience. So but you're in it.
Yeah, I was in it, in the middle of it. It was kind of ready, fire, aim, let's try it and see what works. So I learned through my education, learned a lot more about how to minimize risk, how to do things with a little more analysis and preparation than just diving in.
Okay. Was the maybe the leaders that you were a part of, and were they more similar, maybe a little bit like me, where I was get really excited and passionate about something, and maybe there wasn't the depth of preparedness that maybe there should be? Yeah,
I think it's both and. There's a risk in entrepreneurship. You got to step out and try things, but the number one priority when you start something new is to learn. And often we think, I just got to succeed. But if we're willing to adjust, and we call it pivot or persevere. If something's going well, it's persevere. If not, let's pivot. If we have that mindset early on, we test things, and before we throw too much money at them and too much time, we can kind of see if it's going to work ahead of time. That's why 75% of businesses fail, because we don't take enough time to kind of analyze before we dive in completely.
Yes.
And that's why we develop what's called a minimum viable product, it's a prototype or something that gives us a chance to test it out a little bit and then move forward before we totally spend all our money.
Yeah, and it's like more than just a business plan, but you're kind of analyzing the terrain, kind of seeing what it looks like.
Yeah.
And you've done this countless times. I've actually ripped your business plans as not a as a kind of a base to kind of help understand, okay, as we were building out our restaurant and our coffee shop, you were so instrumental of helping us say, okay, what is the market? What does this look like? And all these different aspects of that to kind of, before you jump too far out.
Yeah. I used to develop thick business plans.
Okay.
They would sit on the shelf, would get dusty and never get read. And then I learned how to develop what we call the lean business canvas, which is a very simple, you can do it on one piece of paper and you can analyze key parts of a successful business and how are we doing. And that really has helped me simplify the whole process.
Okay.
I can help a student, I teach at GCU right now, I help a student in an hour develop their plan.
Really?
Not a perfect plan, but it's a great start with all the key elements.
What are the key elements that they're trying to look at?
Well, the main thing is, what's our value proposition? Not just what are we building, but how's it going to help people? And then who are we actually reaching?
Yes.
A lot of students say, well, I want to reach everybody in the whole world.
Yeah.
I said, well, is this going to help babies in Bangladesh? Maybe not.
Yeah.
So focusing that, when you get that straight and a good match between what you're offering and who you're offering for, then everything else falls from that. You know, you want how are we delivering the product, how we maintain customer relationships, what's our revenue streams, and then kind of on the back end, what are our key activities to do that? What are our key resources we have to succeed? Who are our key partners? And then what are our key costs? So there's 9 basic building blocks of a good business that we help people analyze.
And you are very focused, like when you're starting off, do you think a lot of times that as someone is developing a plan, it's so broad?
Yes.
They want to help everybody, or this is for a service for everyone?
Yeah. When you try to help everybody, you help nobody.
Okay.
When you try to reach everyone, you reach no one. So really focusing the market and what we're offering that's unique. You don't have to help everybody. You start with something and then it could grow from there. You can scale it, you can expand it, but you got to start with something manageable. Yeah. Especially if you don't have millions and millions of dollars.
Right.
So
I heard this one guy say, and it's terrible, but the riches are in the niches.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah, it's true.
You have to like go super focused in that one area.
Right.
And that probably kind of almost like, as we think about almost our own life, I don't know if you're like, if this resonates with you, but like I have been doing so many things and I end up doing way too much that I'm like, not as satisfied in my own life. And I remember for you, one of the biggest kind of moments for you was like the sabbatical that you went on.
Right. Yeah. I went on about 15, maybe 20 years ago.
Okay.
I went on a sabbatical and my supervisor asked me to write down all the things I was in charge of. So I made a list and there were 70 things, 70. And that was a huge wake up call. It's like, I had become a human doing more than a human being. I realized, and I went to a counselor to try to sort this out. It was embarrassing for me. I'm a pastor. I should have my act together, but I went to counseling. I'm so glad I did. And the counselor asked me the first session, who's Paul? And I could tell him what I did, but I couldn't tell him who I was.
Wow.
And that led me to a whole journey of figuring out who's Paul, what's my identity in Christ. And then I went through a process that they, for a sabbatical, I got $5,000 to do whatever I wanted with it. Okay. Instead of going on a trip, don't tell my wife, instead of going on a trip, I went to a consulting firm that helped college presidents figure out their calling. And they took me through a whole journey of sorting out my passions, my gifting, and what I did as a little kid that I loved. Yeah. Sometimes when we grow up, we do what everyone else wants us to do.
Yeah.
What did you really enjoy as a kid? And out of that, I really learned I had 2 basic passions: to love people as a pastor, love doing that, and to help launch new initiatives for the kingdom. So that 20 years ago gave me a whole new focus. And it's been guiding me. Before that, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I grew up. But now I know. And I love everything I'm doing now fits in those 2 categories.
So those are like the 2 kind of like guiding principles for your life.
Yeah.
And 70 things.
Yep.
70 things that were so and I think that is probably familiar to a lot of high level leaders and people who have high levels of capacity, that they're the ones that will get it done.
Yeah.
Hey, yep, sure, I can take care of that. Sure, I can do that. I can do this and fit it in my week. And by the end of it, you're just beyond tax, and
Right.
were you almost like addicted to success?
I think I did get kind of a high from all the latest adventure and the new thing. But I realized I couldn't know what to say no to because I didn't know what I was saying yes to.
Okay.
Once I got that figured out, here's what I really want to do. Like I have a passion for the next generation. That just drives me. So a few years after that, I got a call from a big church in Minnesota asking if I would be the lead pastor.
Okay.
Great salary, great, big church. I didn't have to think for 2 minutes about that because I knew I was called to the next generation and helping start something new. And that just helped filter a lot of things that I would have otherwise probably done.
So that's like you had to do some deep soul work to find out who you are and who you aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really helped me. And not that I haven't struggled with trying to do too much once in a while since then, but I feel a lot more focused, a lot more clear.
Yeah, I think even for me as my own, like as I'm kind of have worked through a lot of myself and my identity, I was so focused on, I not just had an imposter, I would just be who other people wanted me to be, but I had this imaginary audience of like what other people think I should be and be about. And it was always built on my success, always built on what I could do and not just who I was.
Yeah. So what changed that for you? I noticed you're a little more clear about what you want to do now.
Yeah, I am. I think it was a sense of surrendering. I think it is paring back and narrowing my focus. I think that not just becoming a parent, but like being content, like this sense of contentment and peace probably has emerged in the last 2 years where it feels like, again, I was always striving for success and striving for more. And it was impossible for me to be at home in the evening to just be present with my kids. Like last night, it's 6:00. We just finished dinner. And instead of jumping on my laptop to do work or getting the next thing done, I was like, hey, kids, want to get out the Scrabble? And it's like just being present of like with my kids in that moment. Or being present in maturing as a leader. Like I have 6 execs on my team and being okay that they have the mantle for this part of the business of HR and I don't have to worry about it. And my COO is focused on revenue generation and making sure that this part of the business is taken care of. And I can check in and I can release control because I have a high level of trust with them. And I think it comes back to knowing who I am and who I'm not. It's like, it was like deep soul work, honestly.
I also noticed you've really grown and developed over the years your ability to delegate and find great leaders and empower them and manage, create systems that help simplify.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I need to be able to, like, if I'm not delegating, like I think that becomes the lid of any leader is if you're just doing all the things for everyone else, because my leaders have to delegate their abilities to make decisions, because when they can make the decisions, then I get out of the way. If my phone, and I tell my leaders all the time, if your phone's ringing off the hook by your staff, you haven't raised up your team. You have not, because they should be empowered to make those decisions. The higher you get, the more you unload, the more you delegate, so you can unleash like this bigger dream and vision that you have.
Yeah, I see in Jesus' life how he invested deeply in a few to reach the many. As a pastor, my tendency is to try to reach everybody, but over the last few years, I've learned how to pour deeply into a few and disciple a few and invest in those few, and then it's amazing what they can do. There's no limit to what God can do.
That's right,
because of their multiplication.
Yes, I actually had to. Recently, Ohana has been growing so much that we're out of space in our office. So I had to find additional space, and we found temporary space about 20 miles more north of town. And I had to move all of my key leadership intentionally away from the other admin staff and the other support staff. and it gave anxiety to them. But those staff were ready because they needed to be able to make decisions. Like some of my key leaders who have been with me for 5-6 years, they're like a security blanket to them. And they don't want to, they just want to reassurance and everything else. But it's like, no, it's time for you to fly. And we're there to support you. We check in with you, but it's your turn. And you're going to rise up and you got it. And guess what? Now it allows us to multiply elsewhere. And then the key leaders can actually do their job, think deeply. Like they can have their deep mind work and move the business forward on bigger things.
I think a lot of leaders, myself included, thought of delegation as either I do it or you do it. And we went through a process together, learning how it's I do, you watch, then I do, you help, and then you do, I help, and then you do, I watch. There's a process
absolutely
of helping them gain confidence, but there's that. The hardest thing for me is the fourth step, and that's letting go. And I'm still learning that. I'm watching you learn how to do it.
It's this power. It's like you taught me this paradigm. It was Discipleship Square. We coined it, we rebranded it. Now it's the Ohana Leadership Square.
Oh, cool.
And we teach it through our Leadership Academy. For probably at this point, probably 200 leaders have went through this process of how to help release their staff and it's not even just delegation, but it's empowering them and letting them kind of rise up.
Right.
Because their job is to stand on my shoulders and to go do greater things than I could ever have done.
Right.
You know? And I need to be moving on to the next thing.
Right.
You know? So they got to step up.
Love it. Jesus did that so well. He just kept working with his leaders, empowering them, giving them courage, coaching them, spending time, becoming friends, and then eventually said, hey, I'm out of here. I'm going to always with you, but here you go.
And now you're on this beautiful journey of like, you've created this like powerful church, and powerful in a way of like, it's a beautiful representation of the kingdom. It's reaching the next generation. It has this community around it that's fired up for God. And believes in this mission of the next generation. And you have multiple other, it's not just built on just one person. You have created like these communities around it. And like, this is 15 years, right?
Yep.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
The first day we met, I said, I just felt in my heart, I told our leaders, I'm not here for you're not here to help me build a church. I'm here to help you live into your calling. And if we all do that, there's no limit to what God can do. And it's been step by step, piece by piece, by the grace of God. I've made so many mistakes, but by the grace of God, I'm now seeing this great group of people that are empowered to go out and minister, and everybody gets to play. That's what we keep saying. And
meaning like, you don't have to be like a trained up pastor to be able to do this ministry. Right.
No, everybody gets to be part of it. And, we want to help give people confidence and competence. We don't just send them out to fail, but I'm seeing so many young people that are fired up for the Lord. And that just thrills me. That's been the dream to reach. I also told our leaders right off the bat, we're all going to have a bias for the next generation. If you don't have that, you're probably not going to be comfortable here. We're a church of all generations. My 93-year-old dad's part of it, but we really want to invest deeply.
And my 12-year-old son just went on winter camp with them. And I brought, so I fill out your junior high, your middle school ministry. I got 6 kids that all go. Sure. So when they know the center sprinter brand rolls up, they've got to stretch out and get ready.
Here they come.
Here they come. But I have my one son who is, he has few words. He's more of a watcher and observer, and going into a new space is very intimidating. And I was like nervous. I was like, well, I kicked him out of the car to go to camp, you know. I'm like, you're going, you're going to have fun. But inside I was like, man, I hope he has a good time. I hope he experiences things. And I watched as a week or 2 weeks after camp, he ended up saying how much a good time he had and how the leaders were. He said, I've never heard him say this before. He definitely never said it about me. He's like, that youth pastor Austin, he really knows how to talk to us. And like, that's so good. Like this kid who has had a hurt life and just has so much wounds And then last week, he is the one dragging his heels and never wants to go to anywhere, never wants to go to church. And he asked, he was the first thing he said, hey, can we miss soccer to go to youth group?
Oh, wow.
He missed soccer to go learn about the Lord as a 12-year-old. Like, that's breaking into a kid's life.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I think of the story of Austin, how he started out, had some tough things thrown at him as a kid, and then went through our youth ministry and was invested in by a lot of different people. And now to see him grow through all that, and now he's invested in a group of leaders who are investing in them. So the multiplication that happens when we invest in people's lives is huge.
It is so huge. And now you have this, it's like you were saying how you're on that leadership square, and the letting go part is probably the hardest part for you. And now you're 15 years into this church, and now you're kind of at this space where it's like, all right, you're empowering people to take it over.
Yeah.
How has that been?
Well, when it started very scary when we first started.
Yeah.
I mean, I was felt God calling us to start a new church for new generations, and starting a new church is kind of like a roller coaster ride. The highs are higher and the lows are lower.
Yeah.
You've been there. You've done that.
I have. I've church planted, and you were on my board, and I called you crying many of times. What did you get me into? He said, you're like, I didn't get you in anything. The Lord called you, and he didn't say it was going to be easy.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to be this hard.
Yeah. Oh, man. And, I was first, when I felt I was supposed to do this, my wife's first question or comment was, Paul, I think you're too old for this. So
you're like, thanks, sonny.
But God just took us step by step, brought some wonderful people who we could invest in. We met in our home and just poured into them.
Yep.
It grew from about 30 people to 60. We were bursting at the seams, and that group became the ones that then became the leaders for others. And so it's been a journey, but all along the way, amazing. And then we've been able to, as a church, develop some other kind of entrepreneurial ventures that have helped the mission. And
so when you say help the mission, so you have channeled this way of helping raise some missional support and revenue streams to help support the mission, like a wedding venue, a coffee shop, consulting. Kind of share what's your vision behind that, and what were some of the ones that you have going on?
Looking back, I could say there was this big plan, but there really wasn't.
It's pretty much how it goes. Yes, it is. It's very true.
But when we started Hope, we wanted a place for the community. We wanted not to have our office back hidden somewhere, but out in public. And so we thought, what if we build a coffee shop and then have our office there? It could be out in public space. And I have to confess, I don't drink coffee, and I do very little specifically about coffee shop. But I found people, and we gathered a group of volunteers. We met every week and prayed, and we finally found a space that was awesome.
Yep.
But it was empty shell.
Okay.
And it was back in the 2008 when 2009, 10, where there was bad economy. I said, I'd love to meet the owner of this to see if we could do this. And a friend of mine said, well, I work with him. So we met with Mike Ebert at Red Development. And I sat with him, told him the vision. In 10 minutes, he threw up his arms and said, you got me. He said, I want to be part of this. But I need a feasibility study. I need a business plan to see if you know what you're doing. And so Brian Hansen, a friend, just graduated from a master's degree in that. He helped me put together a plan. We worked hard, getting all the marketing data, presented it to Mike, and he read it and said, this is the best feasibility study I've ever seen.
Really?
They work with Amazon or Apple stores and Best Buy. I mean, they work with all the big ones in malls. He said, I could tell you guys really know what you're doing. I about fell out of the chair because I didn't have a clue. I hope Mike isn't watching this. Anyway, but we just started working and brought a team around of people. It's like if you can do about anything you want, you could run the Palo Verde nuclear plant if you wanted. But you wouldn't go down and start messing with the rods right away.
That's right.
You'd get people in a room and say, okay, who knows what's going on here?
Sure.
And that's what I did. I found people that had expertise, and someone was an architect, and we built that with 100 volunteers.
Wow.
And we decided try to decide whether to make it a nonprofit or for-profit. And we felt the best was a for-profit, because if we didn't serve people well, it wouldn't last.
Right.
Sometimes a nonprofit, you just get more gift money and keep supporting something that isn't really serving well. So it forced us to really be lean and mean. Mm-hmm. And we struggled the first couple of years to keep, but we had to pay the rent, and we kept up, and eventually it grew and grew till we thought when we were at full rent, we'd never be able to pay for it. We got past that. That was 8 years ago, and now it's thriving, reaching. What I love best about it, it's a big coffee shop at the shops at Norterra and Lifestyle Mall. What I love is that, and it provides some resources for mission back to us. They pay their taxes, and then we're now 30% owner in it. We were 50, now we're 30. It comes back to help mission. But what I love most is the relationships that happen there. That, for example, there was a guy sitting in front of us when there was live music one night, and he turned around and said to my wife and I, "Would you like the rest of my brownie?" I thought, no, that's okay. And we laughed, and he said, "No, I cut it with a knife." And so we took it, and then I just kind of leaned in. He was sitting in front of me. I said, "What brought you here?" He said, "Well, a friend brought me for live music. I'd never been here before." And I always ask, "What do you do for a living?" And he said, "Well, I trained the U.S. government and the Chicago Police Department how to relate to Muslims, because I am one." And that led to a whole conversation. And he asked what I did. I said, "As a pastor." He said, "Oh, I've touched the tomb of Jesus. I've touched the Kabbalah." And we had a great conversation. His son had become a Christian through CCV, and we ended up becoming friends. He was going through some struggles, and I was able to help him. And I never would have met somebody like that at our church, but I was able to meet him there. And that's what I have loved about that.
That is beautiful. That is and every time I go there, I have never been to a coffee shop, and that's the hand of God. I think it's not just your due diligence and the meeting together and the prayers over it and the planning, and what, even with you talking right now, like I have some struggles with my own coffee shop, and it's because I have so many things going on. I don't have maybe the right people around me all the time. Like let's dial in this and make sure it's just humming, because it takes intentionality.
Yeah.
And then making sure that you have the right people around it at all times.
Yeah. Yeah. When we hired Troy, our manager, 2 years into it, he's made all the difference. He's done an amazing job. So
he eats and breathes it. He knows, and he knows about hospitality really, really well. Yeah. And you've created the community around it. I mean, it's just packed all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. So early on, I had to kind of drive it a little bit from the back seat.
Okay.
But once Troy came along, we were able to train him. I don't have to worry about it day to day. I help with marketing and business development, but it runs without me around.
So you can have this for-profit, nonprofit synergy. And do you feel like that is, what I'm noticing is that in a lot of businesses and a lot of nonprofits, even GCU and other places, they have this blend where they are working together to kind of help support one another.
Yeah, and it's really nothing new. You think of hospitals, a lot of them are nonprofit, work with doctors who are for-profit. And the key is that you can't take home the money that you make if you're a nonprofit. You put it back into the organization, and you can get donations and all that. But I think it's what serves the mission best. Sometimes there's for-profits that serve the kingdom really well. Right. Certain publishing companies and other things you're involved in. And sometimes it's better to be a nonprofit. So we try to think what's safe under IRS guidelines. Right. Make sure we do it right. Yeah. So it's always keeping that corporate veil. You were always very rigorous with that. Yep. And making sure that you're not lending money to each. Right. There's no private benefit to an individual from a nonprofit. As a for-profit, make sure we're paying the taxes and all that. Right. So I get asked a lot about what is the difference between for-profit and nonprofit, which one to have. So a nonprofit is a tax designation of the organization where there's a board that oversees it. There's no private owners, and there's no one. And the board oversees it. They can make a profit, but the profit is not going in the pocket of the owners. Yes, the ownership. Yes, technically, I think you can make more than you spend. Right, and it's important to do that. but it doesn't benefit the owners. It goes back into the organization.
Yes. There are many nonprofits that have a great deal of bottom line profit.
Yeah.
It's like for nonprofits, it's a tax designation, not an aspiration.
Right.
That's what I would say a lot.
Yeah. And the other thing, if you're a for-profit, you can't go out and get donations.
Right.
That's you have to be a nonprofit to do that.
Right.
Now you could get in people that give you money, but they're not going to get a tax break for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big kind of distinguishing factor is like maybe as you're taking that step towards entrepreneurship and what that looks like.
Right.
So now you kind of are one of the things, so you've been involved in creating multiple business entities, but all kind of focused on creating this purpose for the next generation. As you are mentoring these college students now you're a professor, in addition.
I love it.
Yeah. Like
That's a hobby.
it's a hobby. Yeah. And it ignites a passion inside you.
Yeah.
What do you, as you are giving them like your wisdom, like how do you find their purpose, unleash their purpose in their life? What are some nuggets that you would tell them?
Yeah.
Or someone that maybe is listening that's struggling, like, hey, I am just lost. I am just a mom at home trying to figure this out. I have this passion to do this, or I'm about to graduate high school or college, and I just don't know the direction to do.
Well, I think it starts with what we call the bird in the hand.
Okay.
What do I have now? Who am I? What are my passions? Then there's ways to sort that out. What are my passions? I think of that as a model of a circle. I think, what am I good at? What could I do well that I'm naturally good at? Talents, gifts. And then what's sustainable? You can have a passion for something, but you think, I either got to become a nonprofit or I'm not going to make any money at it.
Yes.
So those three. You had a fourth circle in a model that I don't remember your fourth circle.
Yeah.
Those are three that
I think one of the circles that I've always had is also like, what does the world need?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's maybe more of a mission-centered kind of version of like, what breaks your heart?
Yeah.
What's something that like burdens you?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times for me, when I'm thinking about that fourth circle, it's like I need to figure out. It almost heads back to your part of your life that maybe was a part of you.
Yeah.
And it's connected to it.
Yeah. So it starts with some deep reflection. That's why I love teaching this class, because I get to help students dig deep into who they are and what their story, and start with that. What's your calling, if you will? What's your purpose? And then out of that, what's something that's not been done before? And it doesn't mean you have to come with a whole new product or a whole new service. Maybe you're tweaking something, making it a little better.
Yeah.
You know, that's what you're doing, is making foster care homes better.
Absolutely.
And you didn't invent foster homes.
Right.
But, so many great new innovations are just making some. Steve Jobs didn't invent the computer.
Right.
He just made it more accessible to people. Walt Disney didn't invent amusement parks. There were amusement parks before him, but he made them better.
That's right.
So that's what I think of as what's going on around me that's breaking my heart or frustrating me to a point that that becomes the fuel, the passion that drives me to try some things.
And when you're talking about the bird in the hand, that's something that you can start with right now.
Yes. It's the whole phrase, bird in hand's worth two in the bush.
Okay.
I've got something now. I've got a garage. I've got $10,000 that my aunt gave me when she passed away. I've got that. Let me start with that versus waiting till I have $1 million or have a manufacturing plant.
Yes.
That's where
once I have this, I can have. How many people that I've had that has reached out to me is like, oh, I would do that if I had this.
Yeah.
I'm like, and now I'm telling my kids, like, now my entrepreneurial focus is on my 10 and 12-year-old kids.
Yeah.
And saying like, what do we have right now? Oh, we got some backyard chickens. We got 17 backyard chickens. That's a dozen eggs a day.
There you go.
Let's see how much it costs us to provide the food and the carton, and how much can we sell it for?
Next thing I know, Ryan's going to be buying a big chicken house. There you go.
Yes, I am. I actually have a dozen eggs for you. It's only $9.99. And we take all types of payment. Yes. Tap on your way out.
Yeah, no, that's great. That teaches them that you start with what you have.
Yes.
And then entrepreneurship is networking. It's building relationships. It's not just what you know, it's who you know. Maybe you have a friend that has the resources. Maybe you have a friend that's smart at something.
Yes.
Who could I bring together like a patchwork quilt and let the pieces fit together?
Right.
Versus we tend to think, I've got this idea, I got to keep it to myself.
What do you do about these? Like, so you're you're just a relational guy, right? And you're so good at developing relationships and connecting the pieces. What do you do about if you're a person that is maybe not as skilled like that?
Yeah.
Like maybe going up to someone at a coffee shop or making the text introduction or asking someone to get behind an idea, but you're terrified.
Yeah, that's always a challenge for somebody that's a little more of an introvert personality. But introverts can make great entrepreneurs. It's kind of left hand, right hand. You might be good at the details and the organization. Left hand, you're more at the relationships. You got to be a little more ambidextrous. You got to work on that left hand a little more.
Sure.
But I think you don't have to think of it as I got to go sell this to somebody. It's maybe I come and learn from somebody. Like I tell my students, go out and say, I'm a student. I want to learn about your business.
Yeah.
And you may be surprised what comes out of that. And you don't have to be like super salesperson to do that. You can just people, if you have some good questions, people love to talk and love you to listen. So be a good listener and learn from it.
And it's not everyone, I don't think everyone has to necessarily be an entrepreneur. Maybe this is a podcast that naturally we have a lot of people who are interested in entrepreneurship, but some people but unleashing your purpose can be in your own family. It can be the church that you're serving, and maybe the single mom in your neighborhood and coming alongside them.
And I also say that there aren't just like super person entrepreneurs and then there's the rest of us. You can learn how to be more entrepreneurial too.
Yes.
No matter who you are, what your personality, it's not like
it's a skill set. It's not
some got it, some don't.
Right. So you're doing it by kind of testing the water, stepping out, trying things out. Because you naturally maybe had a natural bend towards it, but you probably have trained up hundreds of entrepreneurs that naturally weren't that way.
Right. They learned how to be more that way.
Okay.
And you find your purpose and your niche. Some feel comfortable working in a big corporation, and that's fine. But you could be innovative in a corporation.
Oh, yeah.
There's corporations like Gore here is the favorite company in the country to work for.
That's right.
And it's because they're so entrepreneurial and innovative within a corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we are just beginning to scratch the surface, and I need you to come back and we need to do like a mastermind of like helping people understand their purpose. And like the 101s of like entrepreneurship and all of these different delegation that you're talking about. People need to hear this.
Okay.
We need you to come back and do a full-on thing with us.
Well, I'd be happy to help, and I'm learning as I go. I'm learning from you, learning from others, and God's been gracious in the midst of it.
Well, and God has been faithful, but you're willing to step out. I think that's probably one of the biggest things is God needs a willingness.
Yeah.
And with your willingness to step out, it's inspiring to so many other people to be able to do the same.
Yeah.
The last question I always ask my guests, it says, at the end of your life, what do you want to be remembered for?
Wow. Most of all for being a good dad. My son David and Nathan and April, my wife Carol, that's the greatest, and their spouses, that's what I want to most be known for, that I love them and cherish them. And then I think that I had a heart for the next generation. So I believe that's where no generation thrives without the previous generation sacrificing. And I think my generation became the me generation. It's all about me having a good time and fulfillment. But that's partly why our next generation has suffered. And so I want to be a person that loves Jesus. That's, I suppose, ultimately a person that loved Jesus and was loved by him greatly.
Oh, that's good. For those that are listening, you need to rewind that and listen to it again, because that is probably one of the most impactful things that has been said on this. So thank you for making the time.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you, Ryan.
Yeah. So until next week, may you unleash your purpose to profit in business, faith, and life. And don't forget to subscribe, like and share and tell your friends and give me a 5-star review.
Thanks for joining us for the Unleash Your Purpose podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. We'll see you next week.